I'm Jaime Pereira, founder of Glow Jar Beauty. This is Age Unapologetically, a conversation series about aging, confidence, and skin without the fear, judgment, or pressure to look like our younger selves. We have Jasmine Wong joining us, Naturopathic Doctor, helping women navigate hormone health. Thank you so much, Jasmine.
Thanks for having me.
I would love to know how you age unapologetically, professionally or personally.
So I'll first talk about professionally. I do work with a lot of women in my practice who are going through different transitions in their life from a physical sense and from an emotional sense, that they are suffering through hormonal changes, feeling a bit lost, having mood changes that seem to come out of nowhere. So a lot of the work I do with them is really trying to help them to understand this process and to help them to navigate through that, but also to have them recognize there is no one way to improving or resolving the issue. There's a lot of work to be done to really unravel, everything from dietary habits to sleep patterns. Obviously, stress is a big factor. And then really bringing it around to, we need to make you feel good in your body, and there's no one to define that but you, to really try and move away from someone has to look a certain way or think a certain way. Just so from that perspective, being unapologetic for being who you want to be. Obviously, we do set out some goals, some health parameters to make them move more easily, think more easily, perhaps suffer from, less brain fog and certainly the hot flashes, but really is for them to be happy within themselves. I think personally, for myself, in the last few years, going through some of those changes, trying to walk the talk, which is not easy, but certainly I want to figure out my boundaries. So if I'm going to be telling someone, we need to find balance in your life, we need you to go out and find things that excite you, I also have to do that as well. So personally, there's times where I just decline invitations, I pass on things just so I can preserve myself.
That's important. That intuition, I'm sure you now navigating that helps you, again, with your patients, which I'm sure has been a lot different from maybe when you started 20 years ago. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Being fresh out of naturopathic school at that time, 20 years ago, we didn't have prescribing privileges. And so then, a few years later, being able then to prescribe. So that was something I had to learn outside of school. So it just required certainly more education, traveling to different places to get that education because it wasn't part of our core curriculum. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was definitely very different.
Because I think it's important that we have more of a health team, just like having a positive mindset about aging. How do you suggest women kind of create that kind of health team, whether they are lucky enough to have a doctor and a naturopathic doctor? Do you find they can work well together?
I know from my perspective, I try to be very respectful that I have the absolute privilege of time with patients. So on first meeting them, I get 75 minutes to really dive deep with them to talk about past medical history and genetic history and, their eating patterns. Whereas I know for some other doctors, they don't necessarily have that luxury of time. So I do try to simplify it for them that if I'm trying to work with their family doctor, write referral letters, say, these are some of the ideas and maybe some testing that I think would be beneficial, but absolutely respecting that, it's still their discretion, and how they want to also manage, but then hopefully try to work collaboratively. And if a patient is agreeable, happy to share treatment plans and testing that we have done. And hopefully, I think absolutely having a team is crucial.
What do you find is the biggest myth or misconception women have about hormones?
I think when I really think of that question, I think the myth is that fixing the hormones fixes everything. And I think on the superficial level, yes, we could say if we had your hormones working better, you're going to feel better, right? That's pretty straightforward. But I think that is just scratching that surface level. So really the bigger question is, how did we get there in the first place? Which is not easy to answer. And, but to know, okay, what is it about, stress and sleep patterns and, even, trauma and all of these things that make you who you are, but definitely influence your hormones. So I think that's one of the biggest myths is, sometimes people think, oh, well, if I just started on some hormone replacement therapy,
it'll fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I think I heard about the U curve of happiness, which I've never heard before. It's like early childhood and then like later in life those are the most happiest times in your life. And then middle age, we're dealing with, all the things that women hear. Again, it's more negative, right? Like your estrogen's declining, the progesterone's, like all these things are declining. So it makes sense that they would come in to see you and be like, fix this because this seems to be the problem. But don't you find also those, which translates into skincare, those like habits that again are free, they're more lifestyle. That's what really needs to be started with? Or like, do you find that the sleep, the hydration, what just happened in your life is, again, maybe they're just needing that time with you to kind of discover that?
And that's where I think, using hormone replacement therapy can certainly be helpful, especially in those early stages, to get patients to a place where they feel a bit more energy, they're feeling less scattered in their brain, that they can make some of those changes. I think that's really a really wonderful tool that we do have if it can be used safely and appropriately. But then that we don't just quit, that it's not just, here's a prescription, off you go and we're done. It's like, here's perhaps a prescription, if again it makes sense. Let's get you feeling better, but then let's really dig in. Let's really do the work.
Right. Do you feel like you've always had a positive mindset on aging?
I think I'm really lucky in my upbringing. So my father was a marathon runner. My mom was, just always just a very energetic person and very, very positive. And so I think I just grew up in that environment where we were always trying to do things for our health. And I remember my dad would take me to the track, and he studied kinesiology, which ended up being my undergrad, but he would like analyze my gait and like all of these really seemingly geeky things, but really it was all about, hey, let's, work on health in, physical health. And so I think I did grow up in that environment where, being healthy was really important to us.
Mm-hmm. More of like a longevity, strength perspective. Yeah. What do you want women to unlearn about aging?
I would say that looking back, the mourning of, our younger selves, I think we should, celebrate our lives through all of the decades, recognize that to not apologize if as we get older, we perhaps have, because of our knowledge, because of our experiences, we are more clear in how we think, and not to apologize for that, because, everyone's path is different and it's okay to have different opinions. And so I think two things is, one, to not mourn, like youth is everything. We can still find, happiness through all the different decades. I think that's a big part of, aging well, right? Aging without having to apologize for that.
So women that are coming to you in perimenopause and these shifts, hormonal shifts that they're having, symptoms, how do you see that affecting their confidence, especially when it comes to their skin?
So I think it's really interesting because we see obviously in social media and just even like societal expectations, we now have things like preventative Botox and, these, different avenues that people can explore. So I think sometimes there's a real pressure to be like, oh, well, that person's doing it. Should I be doing it? Like, oh, preventative. Like, what happens if I miss the boat? And so you can definitely see how it really, becomes something I wouldn't necessarily say always fixated on, but definitely, they feel that superficial presentation of how they look really affect their sense of well-being, their confidence. And, physiologically, there is a role to play 100%, right? Estrogen supports collagen production. So that's where we will see changes in face structure, not just texture, but face structure. And that includes hair as well. The diameter of hair actually narrows. So then we'll see people talk about their hair seems to be thinning. So that's certainly part of it as well. And, again, it's, we'll see kind of snippets of this like with pregnancy. For example, that during pregnancy, when the hormone levels are high, hair is full and shiny, and just because we're not shedding it so much. And that's really, because of those high hormones. And so for women who have gone through pregnancy, right, they've already experienced some of that. And then when they hit into perimenopause, so again, it becomes, another transition that they're going through. So in terms of, confidence, they feel
just like discouraged, kind of let down, like, yeah.
And they almost want to be a little bit more withdrawn, right? They're not necessarily wanting to put themselves out there, whether it's relationships, whether it's work, whether it's asking for a raise. They're just not necessarily feeling that confidence because, I think often we're matching physical appearance, unfortunately, with success and
self-worth, all the things. Yeah. So you're coming up to a milestone birthday, correct? 50? Exciting. So how did you view, maybe in your 20s, did you think about, did you always have this positive mindset around whole body strength, aging, again, back to your role models? Or what are some of the feelings that you're, honestly feeling coming up to, again, we put such weight on these kind of milestone 40, 50 and beyond birthdays. Are you indifferent, or do you just, what are you feeling about that?
I mean, I want to say selfishly, I feel really proud.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's the unapologetic part of it, in that, again, I'm really grateful for my upbringing, and that, I actually, when I was quite a bit younger, grew up with my grandparents. So, we always had home cooked food, unusual. If we got sick, we drank this bitter tea. And I remember this so vividly because I got a box of raisins, and that was the best thing ever. It was a box of sun-ripe little raisins. And that's sort of how we grew up. So very, again, focusing on diet and things like that. So I don't think I saw my, dad and, running marathons, my mom being very successful in business. So I think I was just really lucky to grow up in that environment where, we could be successful, but we also took time to take care of our health. And so I think coming, turning 48 this year and looking at that milestone, coming up, just really proud of my family, my little core with, my husband and my 2 boys, and, just trying to continue that focus on, balancing. I think it's much harder, right? In terms of social media and technology, it is definitely harder, but, we try our best. And so I do feel we all try, even if it's just 5 minutes in a day, to do something, for myself. So I'm happy with even 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, role modeling, right? Sharing the wisdom that you got from your grandparents, your parents, it does make an impact, that multi-generational exposure. So thank you so much, Jasmine.
Thank you so much for having me.